What's up everybody, Demon back. Welcome to a brand new video. Following up yesterday's news update is going to be a pretty hard thing to do, although I think this one still can compete with that because we have some really cool stuff to talk about today. So, as I usually do, I'm going to show off some funny pictures, and actually I really wanted to feature some good fan art today. There's also this really cool fan art floating around of a more evolved Shin Gojira looking a lot like 2014 actually. I like this a lot. I think this would be a really cool future step for Godzilla. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to Dendare Loaded, or however that name is pronounced, on Instagram for making some of the most incredible Shin Gojira fan art I have ever seen. Now, as you guys can see here, he made that picture of Godzilla getting the buildings fallen on him, but he's also done so many other pictures, and he is just such an incredible artist. I have to give him a huge shout out, and I have to commend everything he's done. So the first bit of news comes from some sort of lobby room, I guess. Remember those old Shin Gojira statues we used to talk about? Well, there's another one. I don't quite know what it is, like why it's there. The movie's already out. It's old news, but it's cool. They're still putting out statues. You can see this one has purple light shining on the back, something that the previous ones didn't have. And now, because a statue is really just a big version of a figure, I also wanted to give some credit to whoever made this awesome diorama, as well as some miniature statues that are also pretty sweet. They show 3 different versions of Godzilla Evolutions. We have that new set that shows all 4. This isn't that. This is different. And the final bit of figure news I wanted to talk about is the fact that X Plus is putting out an all-purple version of Shin Gojira, so you guys can pick that one up whenever it comes out. I'm not going to get this one. I don't prefer these kind of like movie exclusives that are all one color from Bandai, or these X Pluses that are all one color. I think they're lazy. I think they're kind of like, just an obvious attempt to get more money for whoever's making them. I don't like them. The Shin Gojira Steelbook cover art has been released, and wow, is this gorgeous. I'm going to have to get myself one of these. I don't care how expensive it is. This is awesome. I really, really want this. You can see it's part of that 4-disc set, so this is obviously going to be part of most likely the 4K set. You can see this is just a sample steelbook, but still, it is really awesome. Speaking of things that are really awesome, I want to talk about this Shin Gojira virtual reality thing coming out. I don't quite know what it is, but there's a new picture for it. It looks pretty cool. It looks like you're going to be inside of a plane. I don't know what this is. This could be part of Universal Japan, which we'll talk about here in a second, but then there is another sort of 4D Godzilla thing coming out, so I'm not quite sure what this specific one is.
史上最大の破壊神に最前線で立ち向かうのは俺？しびれろ、このリアルに。ユニバーサル・スタジオ・ジャパンゴジラ・ザ・リアル 4D。
You guys can see there, it was the 4D, the real 4D experience, ride, whatever it is, that was the promo for it. It looks pretty cool. I really, someday want to go to Japan. Who knows if they'll still have it? They probably won't, but there is still that Peter Jackson King Kong experience at Universal California, so who knows? It could still be around someday if I ever go. I really hope it is, because that looks like it will be really cool. Now I want to transition into talking about some really nice concept art that's been coming out recently. This is, I believe, part of that same thing we talked about yesterday. Part of the 2016 celebration is when I believe all this was released, or at the very least it started surfacing December 31st, it felt like. So here is a lot of really nice concept art for Shin Godzilla, raising some really cool theories. So the first one, as you guys can see, is the potentially first look we have at Godzilla's first form. Now, this is still concept art, so this was back way before the movie was, brought into light, but it is maybe our best chance of what we can assume that Kamata-kun looked like before he evolved into Kamata-kun. Currently, all we know is that he had a really long tail that came up out of the water. We don't quite know what else there was to him. This could be our best guess as to what he looked like, or this could just be simple concept art for what Kamata-kun would eventually look like. On the other hand, though, you have some pre-design for Shin Godzilla. Now, this all was out already, these pictures right here, where he resembles a mushroom cloud. I am so happy they didn't go with these designs. They look ridiculous. The only one that looks good on this second picture is if you look up in the top left-hand corner, you can see the 54 design, just a more modernized version. That is something that I really like. You guys know I really want to see a 54 modernized. But on the other hand, the other pictures here, they don't look good, and I am really happy that they chose not to go with a Godzilla that looked like this. We do have some pretty cool panels of the atomic breath sequence here. You guys can see that Godzilla is breathing the fire breath mixed with the, smoke. You see his head coming out of the smoke, you see his hand coming out. It's really cool stuff. That scene was brought into the movie, so you guys can see this is almost like a storyboard for it. It looks really good. But I really want to talk about all this information coming out about the tail, because there are some huge, groundbreaking things coming out about this tail. You guys know there is tons of debate on this channel as to what's going on with that. And although the common consensus, the one that I'm a part of, is, yeah, it's just him evolving, this is just his next evolution, there is some evidence to show that there is some other stuff going on here other than just these creatures evolving off his tail as a defense mechanism. Now, the evolution itself wasn't always going to look like this. We see some concept art here showing that the evolution was going to take place in his dorsal fin. I personally believe that the DNA that creates these humanoids coming off of his tail at the end of Shin Gojira comes from the DOE, aka Goro Maki. I do believe that is his DNA, a future theory video that we will be discussing, something that me and Andres Perez, aka Kaiju Noir, talked about in our in-depth review. This is some really cool stuff here because we can see that, yeah, it was always going to have some sort of crazy, groundbreaking moment at the end of the film. This is just a cool thing to see the beginnings of it and how it came into light. But that wasn't always going to be his evolution either. He wasn't always going to look like a humanoid. As you can see here, there was going to be a Godzilla bursting out of the frozen Godzilla, which is something that you guys should know I am all for. If you have heard my theory for how I would do Shin Gojira 2, you know that I want Godzilla to burst out of Godzilla into a more standard looking form. Now, I believe I talked about this in my Making of Persecution of the Masses live stream that I did. That is still up on a video. It's just at the very end I talk about the SH Monster Arts Godzilla 1964 and how I want him, something that looks like that, to burst out of the frozen Shin Godzilla body. Here is something that I like, if you guys can see. He is not coming out easily. He has to obviously tear his way out. And then one thing that I didn't even consider, it looks like from the concept art there would be 2 Godzillas in the next movie. As you guys can see down in the bottom right, there would be 2 Godzillas in the next movie. Something that I didn't even think about. I just thought, we'd get a more standard version of Godzilla burst out of the frozen one, and then bam, we just got the more standard version from the rest of the film. I didn't even consider the fact that the other one that would be still there would just heal up and then continue on like it looks like he's going to do here. I don't even know quite what we're looking at here. I do have a theory as to what this is. This is another version of what the evolution might have looked like. Now, this is obviously a bunch of faces of different Godzillas being grown out of something. I personally believe that this might be an idea that's carried over into the sequel for Shin Gojira 2. Now, what I believe we're looking at here is the remnants of that knocked off dorsal plate from the middle of the movie of Shin Gojira. He gets a dorsal plate knocked off by a bunker bomber. It gets stuck to a building and is found by some military people. I think that dorsal fin is evolving, and this is what the evolution is going to look like. It's not going to be a complete evolution because it's not a complete monster. It is just his dorsal plate, so it's going to be attempting to evolve and just be this really big mess that's stuck to this building. I think that would be a really cool idea to toy with. Now I want to talk about these creatures that are coming off of his tail, because there's tons of concept art being released about these creatures. As you guys can see here, the tail thing is something that they clearly had in mind for a while. They just didn't quite know how to handle it. There is tons of different versions of what we were going to see here. You guys can see there's ones with eyes, ones with cracked heads, all this messed up stuff. Very similar to what we got, although they look more, I want to say, scaled up versions. They look like more grotesque versions than what we got at the end of the film. We didn't really get anything that was too disturbing, but these look like they would have been. Now, I want to keep talking about the end of his tail because there is a lot of stuff that goes along with it. So here's how it appears in the movie. Here's that final shot of the tail, and then here's a close-up on one of the things coming off of it. And then here is what looks like it could be a model version of that they're going to be releasing, or just a 3D scan that was printed out version of that. This is awesome. So this is what it actually looked like in the movie. This is the best thing we're going to be able to analyze up until if there is a sequel, or up until the directors confirm what's going on there. This is our best thing to analyze. As you guys can see here and here, there's something more going on than just some creatures coming off of his tail, and it pains me to say it, but I think I was wrong. Now, we've talked a long time about the possibility of there being a face in Shin Godzilla's tail. We have certainly talked about this image on the right here, about how that definitely looks like a face. I'm still in the camp that no, it's not. It was stylistically supposed to look like a face, but because it's never mentioned in the movie, it's not necessarily going to be a face. Now, we also know that Godzilla's tail has some sort of laser that comes out of it. A lot of people have been saying, well, where does that laser come from if it's not atomic breath? I have to remind you guys again that Shin Gojira can also project lasers from his dorsal fins and his back. I still believe that that is not conclusive evidence to say that it's a tail. Also, I need to mention again that this face that appears on his tail in this picture on the right, and even the picture on the left, it doesn't carry over to the other side of his tail. Now, I thought for the longest time that it was just supposed to be stylistically, and it had no bearing on the plot of the movie, which it doesn't, and I didn't think it would have any bearing on the plot of the second movie because we see those other evolutions coming off of his tail. I think I was wrong. As you guys can see here, here's a top view of that model we looked at earlier. There is obviously a mouth inside of the tail. Now, do I believe this is the mouth breathing atomic breath? Absolutely not. I think that this could lead to something that happens in Shin Gojira 2, but I don't think it has any bearing on the plot of Shin Gojira 1 whatsoever. I don't think it has anything to do with the first Shin Gojira whatsoever. Now, you guys can see here that there's obviously a head inside of the tail. What I believe this is not just the tail is alive, it's got its own mind, it's breathing atomic breath, it's doing this thing. I think that this is, first of all, a cocoon almost, where we obviously see these other creatures hatching off of the tail, but I also believe that the tail has a lot more going on with it. So here's the things coming off of the tail. I don't quite know what this is. It's like some sort of model that they put out, or some sort of model that was created to represent the things coming off of his tail. You guys can see here, they're humanoids. They are messed up, grotesque, really, really awful looking things. This is, you know, I don't quite know what this belongs to, but it is really cool. I like seeing this a lot. Even this one right here where you can see him peeling out looks disgusting, but still is really cool. Also, I need to note that, and keep in mind, this is all leading up to my grand theory about the tail. I have to note, they look a lot like Elagos from Season 1 of Ash vs. Evil Dead, and we'll talk about Ash vs. Evil Dead here in a second. Not that I think Ash vs. Evil Dead has any direct relation to this movie or to this movie series, but I do feel the need to note it because there are some similarities. Here is the tail once again. You guys can see that face obviously on the inside of the tail. What do I think is going on here? I think it's an Ash vs. Evil Dead situation. If you watch Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 1, you would know that Ash's severed hand that he cuts off in Evil Dead 2 winds up growing into another version of Ash. Why is this important? Well, because I think something similar to this is going to happen in Shin Gojira 2. I think the tail of Godzilla could split off and grow into another version of Godzilla. Earlier, we took a look at those concept pictures of a Godzilla bursting out of a Godzilla. I don't think they gave up on that idea. I just think they haven't showed it yet. So I do believe that Godzilla could burst out of Godzilla starting from the tail. It could be a situation along the lines of Evil Dead 3, where there was an evil Ash that ripped himself out of our normal Ash, who's our hero of the movies and the show. I think something like that is going to happen in the sequel for Shin Gojira, and I do believe that at some point in Shin Gojira we will have two Godzillas. Now, this art here is absolutely phenomenal. Credit to whoever made it. I can't quite read your signature down there. Credit to whoever made it. This is what I want to see. When I said I want a more classic looking Godzilla, the one on the left here, that is exactly what I want. A modernized, scary looking version of a classic Godzilla. That one was obviously inspired by the Heisei series. The one on the right was clearly inspired by the Millennium series. I want something a lot like this to happen in the sequel for Shin Gojira. This would just be an amazing way to handle the sequel. I think if Godzilla's tail developed into a whole new Godzilla, this is how I'd want the movie to happen. Okay, so I talked about in a previous video in my Q&A, I want Godzilla's things on his tail to split off from his tail, defend him up until he is ready to move again. I still think that's a good idea, although what I now want is the things on his tail to split off his tail. We still get a whole bunch of setup in the start of the movie, maybe 30 minutes with these miniature, you know, they're not mini, they're like, they've got to be like 25, 50 feet monsters running around through this destroyed Tokyo, killing people, defending Godzilla up until his body is ready to mutate. When it mutates, I want the more classic version of Godzilla to emerge from the tail of Shin Godzilla. That would be an awesome way to show this happening. A really great confirmation of what's going on in that tip of the tail. Like I said, there is obviously a face developing there. There are teeth, full row of teeth down there, so something's going on. So I want this Godzilla to emerge out of the tail of Shin Godzilla, and then bam, we got 2 Godzillas for the rest of the movie. They're destroying stuff. Things need to be done to stop this, and who knows how they're going to do it. I just think that would be an amazing way to handle the sequel. So that is my Shin Godzilla news and updates and theories video. What do you guys think about this? Comment below and let me know. What do you guys think about all this new concept art being released, the possibility of it being brought over into the sequel, as well as what's going on with the tip of Godzilla's tail? Let me know you guys' thoughts and theories down below. I am really interested to hear how you guys think about this one, as well as tell me what you think about my theory and how I would handle it. So thank you guys all for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. D-Man out.